It has been 261 days since we watched Scotty Scheffler polish off his gem of a performance at the Open Championship at Royal Portrush in Northern Ireland. And we are just 2 days away from the very next major beginning, and we could not be more ready for it. Hi, everybody, and welcome into Golf Live, streaming on YouTube and X. Glad you are here with us. Trey Wingo alongside Justin Ray as we get set for the Masters to begin in 2 days. It is Masters Week. Justin, you are down there on the site. You'll be in the booth, right, for at the 18th for CBS this week.
I will be with the CBS crew. I'm very happy to be part of that team, writing for The Athletic as well. It's like Christmas Eve when you're a little kid and you think that the Super Nintendo is going to be under the tree, man. It's always there Augusta week, right? So
Absolutely.
it's awesome. I'm so excited to be here. Can't wait to get going, man.
By the way, we got a great show for you. We're going to do a deep dive a little bit later on the most important stats that Justin has put together and curled or culled over the last 10, 15 years, what it takes to be a Masters champion, the things that you need to look for going into that. We'll get into that a little bit later. In just a few moments, we'll be joined by our special guest, Tony Finau. Tony, of course, has a stellar record at his play at the Masters. We'll get to Tony in just a little bit, and we'll get you set up for everything you need to know. Again, if you have questions or comments as we do the show, please put them in the comment section, and we will get to them at the end of the show as well, because as always, if you're taking the time to listen and watch, we want to take time to listen and watch to you and respond in kind. But I think, Justin, you said it best. Since they moved the PGA back to May, or up to May instead of in August, it feels like it's an eternity waiting for the next major to come. And it feels like we've had a great run on the PGA Tour, and there's been exceptional play, quite frankly, on the Live Tour with Rahm winning,
Sure.
with Bryson winning back-to-back, and the amazing story of Anthony Kim. It has been an unbelievable start to the 2026 golf season. And also Alex Fitzpatrick winning on tour the week after his brother Matt Fitzpatrick won on the PGA Tour. So there's been all this stuff, but it feels like we're all ready for this to get here. It's finally like, okay, now golf season is really underway.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the wait only makes this week feel even more enhanced, right? It's just, it's just, and then we get into the major championships, and it's almost like the season, you blink and it's blazed right past you. I think this year is so much different than the previous four seasons because entering the Masters, each of the last 4 years, we had a clear-cut, multiple winner, number one in the world going into Augusta. Scotty in 22, Jon Rahm in 23, Scotty again in 24, and then Rory last year winning Pebble Beach and the Players going into the Masters. This year, we don't necessarily have that runaway number one. Scotty's certifiably the number one player in the world, and no one's going to question that. But that kind of, I don't want to call it a coronation, but it's not that kind of natural lead into who we think could be the champion this week. As many as 15, 20 guys I could see winning a green jacket this week. And I think that just gives us another layer of anticipation and excitement for this week to get going.
That really is a great point, because it does feel like the last couple of years, or 3 of the last 4 years, Scotty Scheffler was the number one guy going into it. Jon Rahm, in 2023, when he won, as you called him, Jon Rahm, destroyer of worlds, he was clearly the number one player. And then everybody was looking going into last year, is this finally going to be the year for Rory? And we had that unbelievable Sunday with the showdown with Ian Bryson and Justin Rose making 10 birdies on Sunday to force the playoff. It does feel more wide open, right, than it has in the last 6 or 7 seasons.
Yeah, you can build a case for so many different players. Like, I love Matt Fitzpatrick coming into this week. His approach play is the best it's ever been in his career. We know how significant that is at Augusta National. Ludwig Åberg has been so close multiple times the last month or so, comes in with 3 straight top 5 finishes, and we know how well he's played at the Masters. You just keep going down the list, and you find all these reasons why you can love Justin Rose this week. He's averaging more strokes gained approach per round this season than he has since 2013, when he won the U.S. Open. It seems like everyone, you go down this list and there's a reason to have a lot of confidence in what they could do this week, whether it's past success at Augusta National or the form they bring in to the week itself. So it's just, there's so many storylines. It's already the best week of the year for me in golf. And it's just this extra layer of anticipation that comes with all these different contenders heading into the week.
Yeah, and we've got a lot to get into here, and we'll get into all the data points that you use to point out to the players that you like the most. Plus, we'll go through some of the really interesting groupings that we have in the first day of the Masters and how they've grouped these players together. But we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, a man who once shot in the 60s in his first ever competitive round at Augusta with a dislocated ankle will join us. Tony Finau will join us right after the break. Stay with us here on Golf Live. Hey, before we get to the next segment, just want to clue you in on something. If you've got a question for us, do us a favor, throw it in the super chat right here on YouTube. And I mean this, we answer every single super chat, not just the ones that are easy, not just the ones that are flattering, because we don't really have any of those. We'll answer all of them. If you're taking the time to support the show, the least we can do is respond. Just let's make sure it's not anything profane, because, it's a family show. So if you've got something on your mind, drop it here in the super chat and we will respond. So if you consider yourself more of an audio person, look, I totally get it. The Trey Wingo network is now available on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, etc., wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen in the car, gym, on a walk, wherever you carve out that little space where you need to just get away from everything. Same conversations, just without the camera. Hey, subscribe across the platforms and share it with your family and friends. Follow the Trey Wingo network. Hey, if you're new here, first of all, welcome. We're glad you found us. We launched this platform really at the beginning of September, late August in 2025, right before the start of the Ryder Cup, which did not go well for the U.S., but this platform has gone way better than we thought it would. It's grown so fast, we really can't believe it. We've had incredible conversations with so many people across sports. Justin Thomas and Kevin Kisner, Brandel Chambly, Dan Lanning, Mike Elko, Daniel Jones, just to name a few. And here's what I'll say. Our conversations are different. It's not the same stuff you'll see everywhere else. We try and take you behind the curtain a little bit to get to know the people we're talking to, instead of just asking them rote questions about their last round of golf or their next game. We go a little bit deeper to get real information. No bits, no bullshit, just a ball podcast. And if you've just found us, there's a huge library of conversations waiting for you to consume. We hope you enjoy them. Welcome back to Golf Live. Trey Wingo here with Justin Ray as we begin our Masters preview show. Again, we're streaming live on X or Twitter, as most people still refer to it, as well as YouTube. If you have questions or comments, please drop them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the show, because again, if you're taking the time to spend some time with us and listen to us, we want to listen to you as well. Well, it's going to be a unique Masters in one way, because for the first time in a long time, one player who has a stellar record at the Masters won't be there. Tony Finau has had an unbelievable run in his Masters career, and you take a look at the things he's been able to do in his 8 appearances at the Masters. Made 7 cuts, 3 top 10s, and 1 top 5, and also had arguably the greatest round ever in the history of Augusta. Played with a dislocated ankle in his first competitive round. He shot in the 60s after popping that ankle out of place with a hole-in-one on the par 3 contest. So without further ado, we are delighted to bring in Tony Finau on the show. And Tony, thank you so much for being with us. I know, obviously, you'd rather be somewhere else. It was a pretty impressive run of 33 straight majors that you've played in. So I guess it's a little weird for you to not be at Augusta this week.
Yeah, I mean, there's no place I'd rather be than right here with you guys. There's another tournament going on this week.
Yeah, we're playing the not Augusta for a mustard jacket. It's a very different thing. It's a very different thing.
The Happy Gilmore gold jacket.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, thanks for having me on.
No, we always appreciate your insights. So, obviously you are a guy that's played pretty well at this course. When we put up the numbers, again, you've made the cut 7 of 8 times, bunch of top 10s, with 1 top 5 in 2019 when you were in the final grouping with Frankie Molinari and Tiger Woods. What is it about the course that you like so much?
Yeah, I think it's a golf course that fits my game pretty well. I think if you have some length off the tee, you can get after the par 5s. I think the par 5s are the key to playing Augusta well. There's a few par 4s, I think, if you can play them in even par, that's a bonus for the week. But you really have to play the par 5s well. It seems like the winner every year at the Masters takes care of the par 5s, and I've just been able to do that throughout my career. Limit big numbers, and then really just get after the par 5s with my length. So I think that's that's the reason why I really enjoy playing Augusta National.
I think you're underselling how good you've been on those par fives. Since your debut,
Yeah.
you're 64 under par on the par fives, best of any player in that span.
See, that's why he's the Tiger Woods of golf researchers. He had that ready to go.
I love it.
Like,
I love it,
moment.
Justin.
So if you were to tell a first timer anything, whether it's about those par fives and your approach to it, whether it's about the putting surfaces, what would you tell a Chris Gotterup or a Jacob Bridgman playing there for the first time this week?
Yeah, I mean, those guys are some guys that I think you look at that can have a great run at the green jacket this year. Chris coming off some wins, someone like Jacob Bridgman, who is hot and playing well right now. But I think lag putting is extremely underrated at Augusta National.
Yeah.
If you can avoid three putting, you're not going to make a big number. You might make a bogey, but I think lag putting is important. Hit putts from different places and just make sure you have the speed dialed in for the week. I think the easy one, hole 14, you can't hit it short of the green. There's a handful of holes. I think when you're hitting bunker shots around the greens, you got to hit 2-yard bunker shots. I think getting them just out of the bunker on hole 12. There's so many of those just chip bunker shots that you hit at Augusta that you just don't hit anywhere else. But I think those are a couple things that I tell them around the greens. Really dial in your speed, and lag putting is extremely important. And then hit some splash bunker shots. Behind number 7, if you hit a really good shot, it happens to one hop into that back bunker. You have to hit a 2-yard bunker shot out of that bunker for it to just stay on the green. So there's a handful of places where a short bunker shot will be needed for you to hit it close and get up and down. And so those are just a couple things I think that I've done pretty well that can serve them well to play Augusta National well.
Tony, how hard is it, as Justin's talking about these first timers, how hard is it to manage the emotions of being there for the first time? Because, a lot of guys, especially folks that grew up in the States, the Masters is the one. I mean, like globally, I think the Open Championship is perceived that way. But in this country, I think a lot of people would say, hey, the Masters is the one tournament I want to win more than any other. How did you manage your emotions the first time around? And what advice would you give those guys, not about play, but just managing your own sort of self-composure?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's the hardest part about being at your first Masters, is just taking it all in. It's a tournament that, if you're an American, as you mentioned, Trey, that's a golf tournament you want to win. There's no other tournament in the world, other golf tournament in the world that you want to win more than the Masters. So when you're there for the first time, knowing you're there to compete for a green jacket, it'll bring out emotions like you've never felt or never had before. With all the patrons around, the atmosphere, the golf course that you're playing, it demands the ultimate focus. And so I think you have to bring your best stuff. My situation was a lot different than most guys. On the eve of my first Masters, I rolled my ankle, and so my mind was actually in a whole different atmosphere than any of these guys will face. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but I know what it did for my psyche was it allowed me to, all the pressure I felt like was off, because I was going into my first round with a broken will. The whole world kind of knew it. So in that regard, it took off pressure, but obviously on the physical side, I was playing, with a broken ankle. And so, I don't know if they weighed each other out or not, but I was able to have a good week, but I can't really speak to that. I know leading up to that, I was extremely nervous, but a lot of the pressure for me, my first Masters was kind of overshadowed by what had happened on Wednesday, the par 3 contest before.
Oh my God. If anybody hasn't seen it, like, I'm not encouraging to watch somebody get injured. I want to be 100% clear. The most amazing thing to me was it popped out and you just like popped it back in like it was a Lego. Like I still to this day kept not figuring out, oh, that's out. Well, I'll just shove that back in there. And then you shot a 68. I think there's something to that though, Tony, because on a completely unrelated level, I had a bad flight experience once and it took me a while to get over it. What took me a while to get over it was I had our first child who would not sit still on the plane. I got so concerned about her pissing off every other passenger on the plane that my fear of flying sort of didn't matter anymore. And
subsided,
I think there's something to what you just said there.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I felt. As far as the pressure of the tournament of the Masters, that was way below what I was just focusing on, which was just hopefully I can walk. Hopefully I can swing well enough to just at least put together some decent golf for the week. And I didn't want my first chance of playing in my first Masters after, like you mentioned, Trey. I mean, this golf tournament, and as you know, Justin, everybody wants to win it. It took me 20 years. The very first Masters I ever watched was in 1997. Obviously, we know who won that one. I was 7 years old.
Some guy named Tiger? I don't know.
Yeah, some guy named Tiger Woods. But I was watching that tournament with my dad and my brothers, the first golf tournament I ever watched, and was mesmerized by it. So from the summer of 97 until the summer of 2017, 20 years had gone by, and I finally qualified for my first Masters. And so I get that opportunity in 2018. And on the eve of it, this happens to my foot, but I was not going to not play. I had made up in my mind, if I can walk, I'm going to play. And that's what happened. And there was a psyche part for sure that the pressure was off as far as managing my expectations for what I was going to do. It was all the focus was on my physical side of my body, making sure I can walk, making sure I can swing the golf club as well as I can. And it ended up serving me well. I finished in the top 10 at my first Masters under those circumstances. But, you have to put yourself, I feel like, in a certain mentality when you're playing your first Masters. Learn how to limit the distractions. It's just, your game doesn't change all of a sudden because you're playing a different course and all these things. I think for these guys that are playing it for the first time, they've all done a great job to get to this point in their career to where they are competing for a green jacket. Lock in the best you can and play your game and see where the chips fall at the end of the week.
So you've obviously got a wonderful large family, and I know tomorrow is the par 3 contest. Aside from your first experience at the par 3 contest, which we talked about at length, what's that day like? Just as a dad, as a husband, you get to experience. It's something totally unique in all of sports, really.
Yeah.
That it's not like at the NBA finals. You're able to before the game, like. They don't come out and like
pop a shot. You don't do pop a shot,
right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's just something totally unique. What's that experience like as a dad and as a husband, as a family man?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of things that make the Masters the greatest tournament. And I think there's so many great traditions. My favorite is the par 3 contest. It's the calm before the storm. I get an opportunity to be a dad on the golf course in front of the amazing patrons on this stage. Is just, it's just like, it's a heartwarming thing for me as a dad. I love being out there with my kids, watching them kind of run around, carry the bag, being in their jumpsuits. There's so many special feelings that are hard to describe, but it's all wrapped into that. But it really is just that calm before the storm. The next day it's all business. You're trying to go out and compete and win a green jacket, but for those 2 hours that I'm there on that par 3 course with my kids is maybe the 2 funnest hours and the greatest hours of my time on a golf course, really throughout my whole entire life. So.
And then dad's got to go to work.
That's right. And as soon as it's done, it's time to lock in and get ready for Thursday. But for those couple hours, just so special.
So as we're looking at the field, and we were talking about this off the top of the show, it does seem more wide open maybe than it's been over the last 4 or 5 years when Scotty's been dominant and John Rahm was doing John Rahm type things. And obviously we saw what happened with Rory and all the anticipation of, is this going to be the year he finally completes the career Grand Slam? And he does. As you've been out on tour and sort of watching other players play, trying to find their game, but also find a game that's compatible with Augusta National. Are there a couple of players in the field this week that you really like as potential winners, besides maybe some of the bigger names out there?
Yeah, there's no question. There's a couple of guys that I'm looking at that I think will have a great chance this week. Robbie McIntyre is a lefty. Lefties seem to play Augusta National. They see it differently, and he fades the golf. He has no problem fading the golf ball. Great short game. So him, Akshay Bhatia, those 2 lefties, I think are two guys that are playing great. They have poise. They've shown that they can show up on big stages. Robbie's been in Ryder Cups, and Akshay is going to be future Ryder Cup worthy. So those are 2 guys I think that maybe can be overlooked, but I think that will have a great chance. And then I think Brooks, nobody's going to talk about Brooks Koepka, but I've played with Brooks a handful of times over the last couple months in practice rounds and in tournaments. I feel like he's now on the back end of all the hoopla, when it comes to live and the tour and coming back to the tour and all this stuff. I think we're going to see him play some great golf. but he's shown, obviously, he's a 5-time major champion. He has what it takes to win at Augusta. And I would not be surprised at all if on Sunday, Brooks is wearing a green jacket. I think I don't know what number exactly. Justin has all the stats and all the data.
He does.
He passes the eye test for me. He's striking the golf ball as well as I've seen him strike it. I've played a lot of golf with Brooks. And so that's those, the big stages are where Brooks really shows up. And I wouldn't even blink twice if Brooks is in contention on Sunday. So those are a few guys I think that maybe can be overlooked that I have played with and seen, having to compete against over the first few months of this year, and wouldn't be shocked if any of them are right there on Sunday.
Tony, your eyes aren't lying to you. Brooks entered Houston and leading the PGA Tour in strokes gained approach. It's not that now. He's still way up there, but yes, hitting some quality iron shots. You know how important that is around Augusta.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but you mentioned he's a big game hunter. He has more major wins in his career, 5, than actual PGA Tour wins, 4. So he is clearly a guy who peaks when it comes to playing in the majors. And we'll have more on Brooks. Listen, not only you're a great interviewer, you're a great tease, because all the things that you just talked about, we're going to go into great depth a little bit later with the numbers that data Justin has to suggest.
The lefty advantage, all that
is
stuff.
backing you up.
I love it.
That's excellent. Obviously, you'd rather be there than talking with us this week. And your last chance to qualify for the field came if you could win the Valero Open. You got off to a great start. First round, 6 under. Obviously, the weather came in and changed things dramatically. How much was that on your mind while you were playing at the Valero, knowing that, hey, if I want to keep this streak going, I got to win this week?
Yeah, it was at the forefront of my mind. I played it down a little bit the first couple of rounds, but there was no question that I was playing to try to punch a ticket to Augusta National and to play in the Masters. So I was disappointed in my finish on Sunday, but as I look forward throughout the rest of the season, I've played a lot of nice golf. I haven't put together the tournaments that I feel like I can, but the body's feeling better, the game's coming around, and I'm optimistic about the future events and the rest of my season.
That's really interesting because it does feel like we've seen you play well over really long stretches during some of these tournaments. Like, everyone always says, we're close. How close are you? Do you feel like you are to that player that came with that second breakthrough win in the FedEx playoff against Cam Smith and then rattle off all those wins the next year?
Yeah, I feel extremely close. I haven't been able to put together 4 days of solid golf, but I've put together three good rounds, a handful of times I feel like throughout the season. And, I don't see why I'm not able to rattle off some great golf towards the middle to end of this season. But I've learned a lot again. And the biggest thing is, I had ankle surgery back in October, and my body feels as good now as it's felt over the last 9 months since the surgery. So I'm optimistic again about where I'm at in my game and in my head, and just looking forward to competing at a high level come the rest of the season.
Tony, we would be remiss if we didn't ask you, there's big changes coming up on the PGA Tour. Brian Rolapp put that sort of 6-pronged approach out there at the Players, and he's going to have an update, we think, around the Travelers, which would be the middle of June, late June, right after the U.S. Open. What are your thoughts on how this whole process of changing the tour has proceeded so far?
Yeah, well, I'm a huge fan of Brian Rolapp. I think he's done an incredible job. I think he's been very transparent with everyone, as transparent as he can be with the players, the media, and just everybody. This is where we are. This is what we're trying to do. This is, these are the dates that we're trying to, accomplish those things. He's not afraid to step on toes. He's a different cat that way, just in that he's coming from the NFL world where, he was able to get some of the greatest media deals ever done in all the sports in the NFL. And to have someone like that heading the PGA Tour, I think is invaluable. I think we really hit the jackpot with him. And so I only bring that up because I don't think he's scared to ruffle any feathers when it comes to making changes. And I think we're at a point on the PGA Tour where we may have to ruffle some feathers to make the changes that I think are going to be best for the tour. He's a guy that's not afraid to make those changes. He has a lot of poise in the business sense, and I'm happy that he's at the forefront of making the decisions for our tour.
Well, actually, I'm going to get a chance to sit down and talk with Brian next week. So I'll look forward to having that conversation. I agree. I've known Brian for a long time through my long tenure working with the NFL, and I think he understands what's in front of him. And like you said, I thought the favorite thing he ever said was, "We understand the traditions of the game, but we don't feel like we need to be bound by them." I'm sort of paraphrasing, but I think he wants a combination of the best of what was and the best of what can be for the tour. And we'll see how that comes into shape over the next couple of months. Okay, listen, we appreciate your time. I know you'd rather be where he is in an Embassy Springs Hill Suite or an Airbnb.
His spot will be better than mine, I imagine. Not that there's anything wrong with where I'm staying, but
no. You don't want the linen suddenly to look bad. So say nice things about where you are, Justin.
It's a lovely place.
Justin, I know you want to bestow another title on Tony before we let him have the rest of his Tuesday.
Absolutely, unquestionably, the #1 all time in the power rankings of best dancer in TGL history. It's not close.
And I'm not going away. It's not going away.
That's right.
That's Tony's way. That's Tony's way of saying he'll be back to defend that title. I think is nice.
That's it.
Right. Well, listen, Tony, we appreciate you being with us. I look forward to you starting another streak of 30+ majors being played in a row. And I'm glad your ankle's back and you're feeling better. And we'll see what happens for the rest of the season. Thanks for being with us.
That's right. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony.
Anytime.
Hey, Tony, just a reminder, Golf Live with me, Trey Wingo, is live every Tuesday now at 4 o'clock Eastern. That's 1 o'clock Pacific and 11 a.m. Hawaiian. It's me and the great Justin Ray, who is the Tiger Woods of golf researchers, breaking down everything happening in golf each week across the globe. We'll also have guests, and we're reacting to your questions in real time. So if you want to actually be a part of the conversation instead of just watching clips later, join us live Tuesdays, 4 o'clock Eastern, Trey Wingo Golf on YouTube with the great Justin Ray. Hey, before we get to the next segment, just want to clue you in on something. If you've got a question for us, do us a favor, throw it in the super chat right here on YouTube. And I mean this, we answer every single super chat, not just the ones that are easy, not just the ones that are flattering, because we don't really have any of those. We'll answer all of them. If you're taking the time to support the show, the least we can do is respond. Just let's make sure it's not anything profane, because, it's a family show. So if you've got something on your mind, drop it here in the super chat and we will respond. All right, good people, I need a small favor from you here. If you're watching this and you're enjoying it, hit that like button on YouTube, repost it on X or Twitter, and leave a comment wherever you're listening from. It really does help the show grow. Leave a comment. I read them sometimes. I probably shouldn't, but I do. We all have guilty pleasures. And make sure you subscribe to both channels, Trey Wingo and Trey Wingo Golf, and hit the bell so you know when something new drops. We're building some really special things and doing it the right way, and I need you to stay on top of it. Do these things, and we'll all grow together. So if you consider yourself more of an audio person, look, I totally get it. The Trey Wingo Network is now available on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, etc., wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen in the car, gym, on a walk, wherever you carve out that little space where you need to just get away from everything. Same conversations, just without the camera. Hey, subscribe across the platforms and share it with your family and friends. Follow the Trey Wingo Network.
And welcome back to Golf Live. Trey Wingo here with Justin Ray on our Masters preview. Again, we appreciate you being with us, and we appreciate your questions and comments. We see they've got a bunch of them in there already, and we will get to those comments at the end of the show. Also great to have Tony Finau on. Justin, I think you said it best. He's just got the best outlook. A lot of people would not even thought about doing something like this the week after he fails to win, which denies him to continue his streak of 34 straight majors played in. And he was like, yeah, I'll come in and talk about it. It's just refreshing, And
he talks about in that interview about this is the one championship everyone wants to win. It obviously means the world to him. And he's not playing for the first time in a decade, basically, and agrees to come on. Just the absolute best. Can't thank Tony enough.
And as we continue our Masters preview here, we've got a lot of data we want to get into. But one of the fun things that comes with Masters Week is you get an early look at who the members of Augusta National group to play with each other. And there's a bunch of them that just sort of jump right off the page to me. Back-to-back threesomes. Patrick Reed, Tommy Fleetwood, Akshay Bhatia. Immediately after that, Bryson, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Xander Schauffele. Like, that's over an 8-minute starting time difference, that's a pretty strong six-some right there.
Yeah, that's not bad. And then the bookend of those two is great as well. I call this the elder millennial group, shouting out my age group here. DJ, Shane Lowry, Jason Day preceding them. And then after that, we got Hideki, Colin Morikawa. Hopefully, fingers crossed, his back's all right. And Russell Henley, who might be the most underrated player on the PGA Tour. It's great to see these groupings come together. We were talking about before we came back on after break, during the break, about Mason Howell being grouped with Rory McIlroy and Cameron Young.
What did he do wrong?
What did he do?
What did he do wrong?
A competitor like him, he's probably fired up, to like 11 out of 10 that he's in that grouping. But no difficult task. Who was your favorite grouping in that afternoon wave?
Well, again, the second to last one I think is absolutely fire. Scotty Scheffler, Bobby Mack, Robert McIntyre, and Gary Woodland. Now, I will say, and we talked about this a little bit, that's going to be an interesting one for Gary, right? Because obviously Scotty is going to be Scotty, and McIntyre shows up in big events. We've seen that time and time again, has yet to break through in one of those big events. But, Gary has been very open and honest about the things that he's been dealing with since dealing with the brain surgery and everything else that went on. Then literally for him to sort of stay in his own space, I think is going to be really important for him.
Yeah, for sure. And look, it was obviously an amazing win at the Houston Open, but he didn't have a lot of high finishes before that. So maybe this is a little bit of a difficult spot to put him in, maybe. But look, he's a U.S. Open champion. He's won a million, he's a handful of times on the PGA Tour. I'm sure he'll be able to handle the moment. The group right after that, there's one guy I want to point out. If you haven't been following the tour ultra closely, a DP World Tour player last year, Marco Pinge absolutely crushes the golf ball. I cannot wait to see some of the lines that he takes off the tee here at Augusta National. It's going to be really exciting to watch.
And then the 120 group, just a couple before that, Spieth, Rose, and Koepka. That isn't. I mean, I don't think you could have two more separate ways of playing a golf course from Brooks Koepka and Jordan Spieth. Brooks is saying, "What do you think about out there?" Nothing. Jordan, what do you think about? Everything, and then you have Justin Rose in between, who's playing maybe some of the best golf of his career. That's just from a grouping chemistry. I find that threesome fascinating.
It is fascinating. All guys who have succeeded on the biggest stages. The one Justin Rose stat I have to share that is absolutely insane.
Just so you know, this is why we do this show, because you have these numbers.
That's true. Justin Rose has led or co-led after 11 Masters rounds in his career. If you include co-leading after 72 holes in those two playoffs, which I would count. Among all players in the history of the Masters without a win, no one else has more than 6 rounds led. He has nearly twice as many. It's one of the most incredible star-crossed careers in a single major. You think Phil or Sam Snead at the U.S. Open, this is right up there in terms of how close, how often he's been.
And I understand some of this is recency bias with how much and how quickly the tour purses have elevated. I think Just is in the top 5 all time in Masters earnings. And, now, obviously, Jack would be there in a different situation. If we did $68 to $26, we understand that.
You've got to play a lot of really great golf for a long time at Augusta National to get up on that list. Yes, absolutely.
And not win. Like most of the other players on the top 10 in that list, I think almost all of them have at least one win. Patrick Reed is on that list.
Phil's number 1. Yeah, he's got 3. So I mean, it's a difficult thing to do, and it's just another tally to testament to how successful Justin Rose has been and just not broken through with a victory at the Masters.
The Rahm, Goddard, Oberg pairing or grouping, also at 108 Eastern. That has a lot of firepower to it. We'll see what happens there. But one of the reasons that I wanted to do this show with Justin is that, again, he's the Tiger Woods of golf researchers. No one has more data, and data that means something, than Justin Rose. I mean, data taken out of context are just numbers. But if you don't put them in the proper context and frame them, they don't really help tell a story. So what Justin does better than anybody else in his profession, he finds the numbers and then he applies those numbers to certain situations, and that crystallizes the thought process behind some of the things that happen. So what do we want to do on this Masters preview show is a little segment called Why It Matters. And we've got some numbers that Justin has culled through his extensive library of data to explain why these things may be important when you are predicting who's going to win the Masters. And the first one you've talked about a lot in previous shows is you've got to be able to find the right approach to the green. So one of the first things you're talking about is strokes gained on approach. And this is one that I think is really important.
Right. So 6 of the last 7 Masters winners have ranked in the top 6 that week in strokes gained approach. That's just a very long-winded way of saying it is really, really important to hit great iron shots at Augusta National. If you look at the winners since 2015, they've got about 36% of their strokes gained total from approach shots. If you look at all other majors the last few years, that number is about 28%. So that's how much more significant it is for champions at the Masters compared to the other major championships. It's a vital thing. I like to say it's the second shot golf course that we have in the majors because it truly is that important. You have got to hit your irons great. When Tiger won in 2019, he led in strokes gained approach. When Jordan Spieth won in 2015, he led. And Rory McIlroy led the field in strokes gained approach last year when he finally broke through and won his first Masters.
Yeah, and again, you heard Tony Finau talk about it. If you're hitting the right shots onto the green, that means you're hitting it to the place where you can lag the ball comfortably. There's always that thing out there. Could an average player with the lead on Sunday win the Masters by just putting? Everyone else has to play the entire course. Could you figure out the greens? And the answer is probably not. Like, that's how difficult the greens are at Augusta. If you're in the wrong spot, welcome to 5 or 6 putt land. I mean, it's
right.
It's
I would ask, are you below the hole? Or are you not? Because that's
farthest point away. The farthest point away from the hole. Good luck.
Right. Right. But the part of the approach play formula is hitting it into the right places and knowing where you can miss, where you can bail out. It's as important here as any other place in championship golf.
All right. We got the next data point you wanted to bring up. That's very predictive. And it's average starts, basically experience.
Yes. No golf course in major championships, men or women, values experience like Augusta National does. I mean, and you can say that from a colloquial kind of, you learn the things over the years, but it's really an empirical data point. The average winner needs 6.5 starts to win the Masters. And you look at some of the players who have in recent years broken through and won, whether it's Sergio Garcia finally winning in 2017 or Rory last year. This golf course really values experience. The Open Championship does as well, but I would argue because this is the same course year after year that you go to, this is where experience around Augusta National, it's more valuable here than it is at the other championships on the major schedule.
How much of that is a factor of the fact that this is the only one that stays in one place? Like, we have anchor courses for the U.S. Open. We have the Rota for Open Championships. But this is the one course, if you qualify, you're going to play the same course every year. And it does seem to lend itself to that being that important because you have to understand almost every nuance of those greens.
And you think about the other 3 majors, if you got to be a great player to play one of those venues multiple times in the Rota, right? Whether it's the U.S. Open or the Open Championship. So sometimes we think through the lens of the elite players, whether it's Tiger, Rory, Scotty, or somebody like that. But typically a player is not going to have. There's a lot of the guest we had, Tony Finau, like he's played. He's just 7-8 years of high-level major championship golf. He's just now going to get back into playing Shinnecock at the U.S. Open for the first time.
Right.
Last year playing Oakmont at the U.S. Open for the first time. So you think about that and juxtapose it with playing the Masters every year, and you can gain much more knowledge, experience, repetition there. And that's where you can find that increased value when it comes to experience on this golf course.
All right, as we continue our Masters preview with Justin Ray and Trey Wingo, let's bring up this one and another really important data point, which says you have to do well on these holes.
Right. And look, you have got to take advantage, in pretty much all professional golf, you need to take advantage of the par 5s, but it is especially significant for Masters winners. 55% of the time on par 5s over the last 20 years, players have made birdie or better on the par 5s when they went on to win. It's an incredibly high number. It's where you make your mark. And then before we interview Tony, you keep going back to this. I was looking at his career performance by holes at the Masters. He's 64 under par on the par 5s in his career. He's over par on every other hole. That's a microcosm of basically you want to survive on the 3s and 4s, and you want to make your hay on the par 5s. And it's really rare for a player. I think it was Trevor Immelman who was amazing on the par 4s when he won in 2008. But it's so rare for a player to dominate the shorter holes and that go on to be a winning recipe. You've got to take advantage of your scoring opportunities if you want to win.
You know, and it is interesting. You mentioned he was over par on all the par threes and par fours, yet he still has 3 top tens and a top 5 in his 8 starts, which is really remarkable. Okay,
Yes.
another data point that Dustin has called that's really important here, and it's talking about how when you get in trouble, you got to get out of trouble.
Right. You got to keep bogeys off the card. And look, the scrambling rate for the last 5 winners is 71%. That's extremely high. It's just a way to kind of empirically say around the green is probably the second most important facet of the game for master success, right below approach play. Everybody is going to miss greens in regulation at Augusta National. You've got to be able to get it up and down. And when you do miss, you've got to leave it in the right spot to give yourself an opportunity to hit the easier shot around the green and be able to save your par. So it's a simple number, the scrambling rate, but that's a very high percentage. And it's just something to kind of tell you need to be on point with your short game, being able to clean up pars whenever you do miss greens in regulation, because everybody is going to miss some.
It's really interesting to point out one thing. Look, there are a million different things that make Augusta and the Masters different than almost any other tournament or championship that you're going to play. But when you talk about the bunkers at Augusta, that's not sand. That's crystallized quartz. Like when you watch the tournament, you're like, oh my gosh, those bunkers look amazing. And look at how powdery it is. It's not sand. It's a crystallized quartz that they bring in specifically for Augusta National.
I can't pick that up at the hardware store and
try
to put
not available.
My little homemade bunker that I try to make in my backyard or something like that.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, it's just one of the many examples of the little extra mile that's gone and attention to detail all over the property that makes it one of the most incredible weeks in sports.
One of the other things that we learned when we talked to Tony is one of the players he really liked was Robert McIntyre. Obviously, the big swinging lefty from Scotland who had the breakthrough win at the Scottish Open, has won a couple of other times around the world, but he's a lefty. And you put out an article recently, do lefties have an advantage at Augusta National? Obviously, Phil Mickelson has won this thing 3 times. I think we have 3 lefties in the field this week: McIntyre, Akshay Bhatia, and Brian Harman, former Open champion winner. So in the research that you've done, what have you learned about the concept or the idea that lefties have an advantage at Augusta?
03 champion Mike Weir, he's still there too. But yes,
yep.
A limited number of lefties. But I found in my research that overall, empirically, you can't necessarily draw that overall it's an advantage for scoring. But there are so many shots on the golf course where players are more comfortable if you're left-handed. In the modern game, it's really rare for a player to shape multiple types of shots off the tee. They kind of tend to stick with one stock shot. And for righties, that's usually a fade. They're not going to draw the golf ball. Same thing for lefties. They're going to want to hit a fade. But the shape of the holes going right to left, it happens on, when you think about 13, think of several holes on the front 9 where that's the shot in play, is that right to left off the tee. Even a hole like 12, the whole location on Sunday, it's a more comfortable shot going right to left for the left-handed player than it is the right-handed player. So I looked through all the data and all the numbers, and take the 13th hole, for example. Since 2015, lefties hit the fairway 11% more often than right-handed players. And in turn, they make birdie or better 11% more often. When you think about the players you're comparing here, right? Like, there's only a handful of elite left-handed players. I think it's 3% of the OWGR top 50 going into the Masters since 2015 have been left-handed. So you're not getting an equal to like a Rory and Scotty and all the different really good right-handed
players. It's not apples to apples.
Right. And even with that, not apples to apples, you have this enormous advantage percentage-wise on a hole like 13. Another hole that I thought was interesting was the par 3 16th. Players are much more likely to, right-handed players more likely to play conservative there because you got to take it over the water. That green and regulation rate is so much higher than the left-handed player who tends to be a little bit more aggressive. So this is easier to read than to understand me explaining it verbally, I think.
You're doing a great job.
I'm doing my best, but there are several shots all over the golf course, and Bones Mackay does a great job explaining this. He has as much experience with a left-handed player as any caddy in history, being the caddy for Phil for so long. There are so many shots on that golf course where a player is just inherently more comfortable if they're left-handed.
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of people are understanding what you're saying, including our executive producer, Nita. She digs the data. And so this is her jam. So if you can figure out what's going on here, you will understand what you'll see potentially play out over the four days of the championship. A couple of other things just sort of popping up from the press conference earlier on in the week. Rory had a pretty comical moment. They were asking about his menu, which I thought was one of the better menus out there, a little coverage of everything. And he sort of offhandedly said, people asked me why I didn't make the dinner more Irish. And he said, well, I wanted to enjoy it too, which is really, it's not exactly a ringing endorsement of cuisine from whether it's Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales, England, not exactly known for their bangers on the menu.
No, not exactly. That's not, links golf courses. Absolutely. Like friendly people you want to have a pint with. Yeah. Sure thing. Yeah. Cuisine. If I've got other choices, I'm probably going elsewhere, and that's what Rory did. I love his diversity of his appetizers, like the lean elk slider,
so
and then,
good.
But also the firecracker shrimp. I think was one of them too.
Yep,
nice little diversity there. But as you and I both know, because I've texted about it a couple of times on our show thread, I'm most excited about his wine list, and
yes,
I dove into some of the specifics with that, and he's got some good ones. You don't typically think he picked wines from his birth year, which is 1990, I believe. Which is it's not typically a year you think of with wine, but I'm not like an aficionado or anything, but very excited to I would love to partake in that, obviously.
The wines, let's just say they weren't box wines. Like you're not getting them for $12. We'll just leave it at that. One of the other things too that came out interesting is Bryson is now thinking about making his own clubs. He's tinkering with making his own driver and his own irons, and laughingly he said that if they don't work out, it's only my fault. And a lot of club manufacturers were like, yeah, finally, like we've been trying to tell you this forever, dude. You're hard to please. Your thoughts on Bryson maybe making his own clubs?
Bryson could get in the press conference and say that he's building a spaceship and flying to Jupiter, and I wouldn't be particularly surprised.
Right.
He's one of the more interesting players at the top of the board for me because of the narrative with him in Augusta National. He famously, I feel like he got some 4 or 5 years of bad karma for calling it a par 68, which felt like
not great,
sacrilegious. Like even if you think that in your head, I don't know if you should.
Don't say it out loud.
He might even say now, like eventually he'll probably say down the road he regrets saying that. But you look at what he's done the last 2 years at the Masters, back-to-back top 10 finishes. Only a couple players have done that, and he's putting so much better at Augusta over the last 2 years, gaining more than half a stroke around on the greens, whereas for the entirety of the rest of his career, he lost more than half a stroke per round on the greens. So does he keep that up? Does that trend continue? Does his newly developed, self-created irons fall apart? Who knows? But with Bryson, there's always an interesting new angle that he's going to toss out there. He also said, I have a habit of innovation, or like innovation is a habit of mine, which I was like, that sounds like something like a communications CEO, like a Apple founder might say. But anyway, he's an interesting quote, interesting cat, and a hell of a golfer.
Absolutely. It would be interesting if one of his own clubs, which you and I have seen happen a lot of times, someone takes a swing and the club head just goes flying off. And I was like, well, that's on me, guys. Got no one else to blame. One other little nugget that I thought was interesting from some of the press conferences, John Rahm is there, and it's the first time a lot of people in this country. I've had a chance to talk to John as he's been traveling the world part of LIV and had that solo win a couple of weeks ago, a few tournaments back. And they were pressing him on the idea of he is the only one of the, I think, 9 people that were playing on the LIV Tour and wanted to keep their status on the DP World Tour, and they had to agreed to pay their fines in 6 events. And one of the questions that Rahm was asked in the press conference today was, how do you feel about finding some way to compromise? And his answer was, I feel like I already have. Now, empirically, that is not true because they have offered him a deal and he has said no. So there is no compromise there. What we might have is a standoff leading to a negotiation at the end of the LIV season where they might find common ground to allow him to play the number of events, which would keep him eligible for the Ryder Cup. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about.
I think part of what you just said at the end of the LIV season, that's a key detail with all of this.
Yeah.
To me, this has always been, They're in the negotiation phase. It's pretty public, and they're going to get to a resolution eventually. It's just not. It's not a pressing matter. We're what 17 months away from the Ryder Cup, and he's not going to play in a DP. He's not going to play he plays in like the Spanish Open, Wentworth,
Dunhill, Irish Open,
Tour Championship. Those don't come till NFL season's already started, right? And we got a ways to go until then. So I think there's going to be more to come there. I don't really think it's a storyline, particularly this week. It's more something that's just I feel like it's going to eventually resolve itself.
I think it's just one of those things where a lot of people had access to John.
Yeah.
And they wanted to ask him the question. And he even said, I don't think it's appropriate for this week. And that may be fair, but we only get to see you once every 4 months. This is the opportunity for a lot of people to ask those questions.
You want to answer now, or you want to answer at PGA, or you want to answer at US Open? I mean,
I want answers at all four, so we'll get different answers based on the timeline of when it becomes a pressing issue. That's how it is. As my good friend Andrew Brandt says, deadline spur actions. All right, speaking of deadlines, we got to take our last break. When we come back, we'll get to your questions. And I want to shout out to a friend of ours, for both Justin and mine, who's getting a special honor this week. Stay with us. We're coming right back on Golf Live.
Hey, if you're new here, first of all, welcome. We're glad you found us. We launched this platform really at the beginning of September, late August in 2025, right before the start of the Ryder Cup, which did not go well for the U.S., but this platform has gone way better than we thought it would. It's grown so fast, we really can't believe it. We've had incredible conversations with so many people across sports. Justin Thomas and Kevin Kisner, Brandel Chambly, Dan Lanning, Mike Elko, Daniel Jones, just to name a few. And here's what I'll say. Our conversations are different. It's not the same stuff you'll see everywhere else. We try and take you behind the curtain a little bit to get to know the people we're talking to instead of just asking them rote questions about their last round of golf or their next game. We go a little bit deeper to get real information. No bits, no bullshit, just a ball podcast. And if you've just found us, there's a huge library of conversations waiting for you to consume. We hope you enjoyed them. Hey, before we get to the next segment, just want to clue you in on something. If you've got a question for us, do us a favor, throw it in the super chat right here on YouTube. And I mean this, we answer every single super chat, not just the ones that are easy, not just the ones that are flattering, because we don't really have any of those. We'll answer all of them. If you're taking the time to support the show, the least we can do is respond. Just let's make sure it's not anything profane, because, it's a family show. So if you've got something on your mind, drop it here in the super chat and we will respond. All right, good people, I need a small favor from you here. If you're watching this and you're enjoying it, hit that like button on YouTube, repost it on X or Twitter, and leave a comment wherever you're listening from. It really does help the show grow. Leave a comment. I read them sometimes. I probably shouldn't, but I do. We all have guilty pleasures. And make sure you subscribe to both channels, Trey Wingo and Trey Wingo Golf, and hit the bell so you know when something new drops. We're building some really special things and doing it the right way, and I need you to stay on top of it. Do these things, and we'll all grow together. All right, welcome back to Golf Live. Trey Wingo here with Justin Ray as we're wrapping up our Masters preview. As we've said the entire show, and we say it every show, if you're taking the time to watch and listen to us, we want to take the time to listen to you. So we've had some questions come in during the show. So Duncan, what is the first question for Justin and myself?
We have one non-Masters question, and that is, Trey, what is your favorite and home course in Arizona?
Wow. Okay, that's a really good one. You want to talk about a target-rich environment. Scottsdale, Arizona is as good as it gets. There's a Indian reservation called Wekopa, which is just in far east Phoenix. It's not really in Scottsdale. It is two of the most fun golf courses you can ever play. I love Wekopa. There's a fun little place called Dinosaur Mountain that nobody really talks about. That is a really great track. And then you get into the Greyhawks and the Talons. Obviously, the Boulders is great. For me, one of my favorites is a place called Whisper Rock. They have 218. It's a private club. They have two 18-hole courses. One of them designed by Phil Mickelson. The overall vibe and the hang at Whisper Rock is as good as it gets. There's a lot, just to people, and Justin can verify this, there's a lot of PGA Tour pros that live in Phoenix, and they could probably get on and play any golf course they want gratis. They pay full freight to be a member at Whisper Rock. I think that's a fair way to put it, right?
Strong, yeah. My friend Aaron Oberholzer had me out on Silverleaf one time, and that
Silverleaf is also amazing.
Amazing, yeah, just absolutely pure.
Quintero up in Peoria is also a really, really good. There are literally, I could spend an hour and a half on doing this. And Tucson, Arizona or outside Tucson has Dove Valley, Ventana Canyon. Those are great courses in Tucson, Arizona. There's a couple of others out in remote areas. There is so much good golf in Arizona. You could never run out of golf courses. So now on to the actual Masters questions, Duncan.
Yeah, absolutely. Any bold predictions for this weekend from either of you?
Well, listen, we talked about this before the show began. I think we need to understand, as excited as we are about this Masters, unless a couple of really interesting circumstances play out on Sunday, it's going to be hard to replicate the drama and theater and history we saw in last year's Masters.
100%. I'll let you give your ultimate situation. I said Spieth 61 on Sunday to force a playoff. I mean, look, the bar is so ridiculously high. Like, it was incomprehensible, the waves of emotion and the weight of everything, and the decade plus for Rory, and we got a playoff, and Rose.
Justin Rose with 10 birdies.
It was just unbelievable. So it's such a tough act to follow, but you have a very interesting top scenario that you've proposed over the last several weeks.
I do. And look, obviously, whatever happens is going to be fun and interesting. But the idea that Bryson DeChambeau has been so close so many times, trying to win this tournament, and then the one guy in his way could be the guy that returned from LIV and is now a wholehearted member of the PGA Tour again and wants to get back to that experience. And Tony Finau even mentioned it when he was our guest earlier on the show. The idea of somehow Brooks Koepka now championing the flag of the PGA Tour, going up against Bryson DeChambeau, who's still the swashbuckling pirate from the LIV ship, matey. That whole thing, I think, would be unbelievable theater. And on some level, I think a lot of people would love to see that battle royale play out.
No question about it. I might take the Spieth 61, though, because it would be, first
also
of all,
true.
Unprecedented and absolutely chaotic.
And then I'd love to see a Justin Rose situation. That would be certainly.
There are dozens of potentially awesome storylines.
Exactly. All right, Duncan, what other questions we got?
What's your favorite hole at Augusta?
Well, I have a I have a very unusual take on that, but I'll let Justin go first.
I love 12. I just think it's the perfect tiny little monster. Like, in theory, it's not a difficult shot. It's a short, I think it's 155 is what it is on the card. But the wind is always swirling. I just think of so many memories there over the years, kind of capped off by just this, the 2019 Masters, when everybody seemingly went up and rinsed it, except for Tiger. Tiger's just out of eyesight, or maybe just barely in eyesight, throwing the intimidation factor in there. But I got to go with 12. I also love 13 because, I don't know, I just think that'd be a really fun tee. I've never got to play Augusta. Fingers crossed someday. But I would love to hit that tee shot at 13.
Yeah, look, 12, you can't go wrong with 12, 13, 15, 16. I have a really unusual take on this. I'm going to say 1. And the reason I say 1, it's impossibly hard, and it's a straightaway par 4. Bunker left, bunker right. You can put the pin a million different places. Some of the best golfers I've ever seen in the world struggle with that first hole more than almost any other hole in their entire career. And I think it has something to do with the green complex. I think it has something to do with, if you're wayward on your tee. I mean, Rory, what he should have tripled?
He doubled
last year in the first, doubled it on the final round, and
first
lost
champion,
his lead.
First champion to double it in the final round since Faldo in 90.
Yeah. It should be a fairly straightforward hole. Yet, because it's the first hole at Augusta, it seems to bite a lot of great players in the ass. When I'm watching the first hole, I'm always like this. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And I know that sounds stupid because it's the first hole, but that's where you see the nerves on these guys, and they come full throttle. So that's kind of a weird one, but I really like the first hole.
I like the take.
Thank you very much. Do we have one more, Duncan?
Yeah, one more. What is your favorite Masters of all time?
Well, actually, Justin and I have talked about this a lot. It's hard to put one more than the other, so I'm going to do the Mount Rushmore. And I think there are one or two that you could find reason to replace them with. But to me, there's four. Jack at 86, Tiger 97, Tiger 2019, and Rory 2025. Now, some people might want to throw in Faldo from six-back, taking down Norman despite his history in 96. Others have suggested Phil in 2004. But from the historical perspective and what those meant, to me, those first four, I would put in any order and I would be okay with it.
Yeah, you could also say maybe when Tiger completed the Tiger Slam, just because of the
2001,
accumulation.
Sure.
My answer is always 1997. It's my favorite sporting event probably that ever has or ever will happen, simply because of the cultural relevance of what that was for a young black man to win at Augusta National. The workers in the clubhouse coming out and tears in their eyes, and just the cultural ramifications of that flashpoint in American sports history, I think is pretty unprecedented. And oh, by the way, the dude won by 12 shots.
Yeah.
Like it was the beginning of a new era. And it's the golf tournament that turned me from, I kind of like going out and playing with my dad and I don't really take it too seriously, to, oh, this is something different. So I was 12 years old when that happened. So kind of
so
like
was I.
Kind of like Tony, when Tony said he was 7 and he was like, it's the first golf tournament I watched. That was the first one I really watched super intently. So there's always a special place in my heart for that.
Well, not only he won by 12, he started out in 40, came home in 30, and Colin Montgomery on Saturday, good luck to him. And he got his ass handed to him. The whole thing.
Everybody did.
Yeah.
It was a great tournament in the B flight.
Yeah,
Tom
take away
Kite gets his green jacket.
it's like take Tiger out of the 2000 U.S. Open. We got a hell of a field. It's a really good thing. It's hard to go against that one. And on that note, by the way, we want to thank everybody for being a part of the show today. Thanks to Duncan, our fine producer, and Nita, our executive producer. Thank you to Tony Finau for joining us. And because, ladies and gentlemen, he is the Tiger Woods of golf researchers, we will leave you with one more Justin Rose nugget about the Masters.
It's not a Justin Rose nugget.
Justin Ray.
Nugget.
Sorry.
It's okay, buddy. This is the first Masters without either Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson since 1994. 43 players in the field this week were not yet born the last time we had a Masters without both of those players. So I think the somewhat corny line I said to Trey off the top of my head was, even in a place as timeless as this, Father Time is undefeated.
Exactly right. And to put that in perspective, there are 88 players in the field. So basically half the field.
Yeah.
Half the field wasn't born the last time we had a Masters without Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson.
Scotty was 2 years away from being on Earth.
What did he ever do? And so on that great nugget from Justin Ray, not Justin Rose, we say once again, thank you for joining us. Thanks to our production staff. Thanks for Tony Finau. Hey, man, enjoy the week. Have a blast being on the tower for CBS and providing them. So all the clever things that you hear Trevor Illman and Jim Nantz say, they're coming from that guy right there. Not all of them, but a lot of them are coming from that guy. Have a great week, Justin.
It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited to be here.
We'll see you next week, buddy. Thanks, everybody. Take care.